Hey everyone, welcome to Singletrack. My name's Will and you guys are about to join me for a test ride on the Giant Trance 29er. Now to kick this video off, we're going to go through some basic specs on this bike. Then I want to chat to you guys a little bit about some of the changes I've made to the stock specification. And then I'm going to go out for a ride. I'm going to take you guys along with me. Now, if this is your first time joining us, make sure you hit that subscribe button just down below. We've got plenty more videos coming your way in the near future. Now, the bike that I'm testing here is the 2019 Giant Trance Advanced Pro 29er. Bit of a mouthful, that name. Now, this is the Trance 29er trail bike. It sits alongside the Trance 27.5. Although it does have bigger wheels, 29-inch wheels, it does have a little less travel compared to the Trance 27.5s. So up front, we have a 130mm travel Fox 34 float fork. And on the rear, we have 115mm of travel via the MAESTRO suspension linkage. On this particular model, we've got a Fox Float DPX2 piggyback shock. Now, I'm not going to go into the specs too much on this bike. If you want to check those out, there's actually a link in the description of this video. Follow that and that'll give you all the specs, geometry, pricing, weights, everything you need to know about the Trance 29er. There are a couple of changes I've made to this bike, which I'll quickly run you through. I've actually switched the tyres around, so we've got the DHR2 on the front and the MINION DHF on the back. Also inside the rear tyre, which you won't be able to see, is a VITTORIA airliner. So I'm running a tubeless insert inside this rear tyre. That's allowing me to run a little bit lower pressure while having a bit more protection for those carbon rims, especially when we're smashing down some of the rocks we're going to be riding shortly. Another change here is I've added a slightly longer dropper post. It comes with a 125mm dropper on the small and medium frames. I'm testing the medium size here, so I've actually gone to a 150mm dropper because I've got a little bit more room there thanks to this nice and short seat tube. So running a little bit more drop on that seat post there. Up front, I've got a lot of gizmos on the front here, but if you can look past those, you'll see this beautiful one-piece carbon fiber handlebar and stem. This is from SYNCROS, and it's called the Hickson IC handlebar. It measures 800mm wide. It's got a 40mm virtual stem length. Basically, the difference over the stock handlebar and stem is this is a little bit wider. So rather than 780mm wide for the stock setup, this is 800mm wide. I'm going to go into some detail on the trail about why I've made that change. Right, so that's some of the basics on this bike and a few of the changes I've made so far. Without further ado, let's go for a ride, huh? All right, so the ride we're going to head on now, just a short loop, some local test trails. Oh, hey doggies. Hello. Hey, how you doing? Hello. Go on. Right, my apologies, just got distracted by a cute dog then. So as we meander along here, just want to talk about some of the features on this bike which I think really stand out, both on the spec sheet and on the trail. So the geometry is something that I think really sets this bike apart. It actually sets it apart from the Trance 27.5 because although this bike has bigger wheels and less travel, interestingly, it's actually slacker in the head angle, steeper in the seat angle, and has a longer reach as well. Got a 66.5 degree head angle, and Giant has mated that to a 44mm fork offset. Now that's a shorter offset than normal. A lot of 29ers are coming with 51mm offset, which is kind of the main standard really, but a few brands have been playing around with reduced offset on their 29ers. Transition and WHYTE being two of the early pioneers of that short offset geometry. Giant's decided to get on the bandwagon with the Trance 29er, and you combine that short offset with a 66.5 degree head angle and you end up with quite a lot of trail. Result of that is, although this bike is a bit short on travel, perhaps compared to what people thought the Trance 29er was going to come with, it's very, very stable, particularly at speed, and the gnarlier the descent, the more you notice that stability. On the climbs, we've got a reasonably steep seat angle. We've got 435mm chain stays, so kind of a balance between flickability but also providing plenty of drive on the ups. And just riding along here, one thing that's quite evident about this bike is the way the Maestro suspension design works under chain torque. Now, out back we've got 115mm of travel, but because you've got that Float DPX2 piggyback equipped shock, the suspension is very good, very smooth, very controlled. If you're plodding along, I've found the suspension can feel a little sticky. It's definitely not super energetic, but when you put the power down, when you really push the pedals down, you can feel that linkage tighten up. And what that does is it puts more of your leg power into the rear wheel. And I can feel it here as I'm driving up this rocky section. Can feel the rear suspension stiffening under power. And the other thing that does is it keeps the bottom bracket from sagging too low. Keeps the pedals spinning away freely from all these pesky rocks and roots. So although the suspension is pretty plush, when you're putting the pedal down, it really stands to attention. Whew. Right, oh my gosh, that's a tough climb, especially when you're gas bagging about a bike on the way up. Talk a bit about this bike's descending prowess, because so far I've been really impressed. That slack head angle and the short offset does give this bike a really planted feel, and once we get through here you'll see what I mean. It carries speed really confidently. There's very little wiggle to the front wheel. It feels like a bigger bike at the front. Whoop, tree across the trail there. That's new. You can absolutely wallop this bike through here, and it just feels so steady. I can't quite believe that I'm on a 115mm travel 29er, and not just one of those, but 115mm travel 29er from Giant, of all brands. And coming down here, this is getting fast. I'm kind of on the limit here, but the bike certainly isn't. It's got a lot more speed that can be unlocked there. Wow! Whoop. And that is just so stable down that descent. Wowee. Holy dolly. That is fun. It has admittedly taken me a little while to get used to this bike and its handling, and sort of alluding to that before about all the stability that comes with that slack head angle and the short fork offset. You've got loads of trail, and that basically, easiest way to think about that is that the steering axis, so a line from the head tube, that line where it hits the ground on this bike is further ahead of the tire. The further ahead it is of the tire, the more of that sort of self-centering effect. You'll find that the wheel tends to correct itself, straighten up. So on that sort of descent we've just come down there, the whole bike just stays nice and steady, and the front wheel isn't kind of dancing about independent of the frame and the rear wheel. It all feels very consistent and very controllable. The one thing I have had to get used to with all of that trail is making sure that I've got enough weight on the front tire. This isn't a huge bike. Reach on the medium is just over 440mm, so it's not enormous, but I think it's bob on for this bike. It fits really well, and it gives a good balanced kind of riding position. compared to, say, some other comparable bikes that have recently come off, which are a bit shorter. The extra length in this cockpit and that longer trail measurement means you do have to weight the front tire. If you don't, if you're off the back of the bike, the more likely you are to lose traction on the front wheel, particularly when you're descending and hitting corners flat out. What I found is that over the first few rides, I've had to get used to pushing my weight forward onto the front tire, and that's part of the reason I fitted these slightly wider handlebars. Now the stem length, or virtual stem length, is the same, which is 40 millimeters, but by going to a wider handlebar, putting my arms out further away from the center of the stem, that naturally brings my body weight closer to the handlebar and further over the front wheel. Not only does the wider bar give just a touch more stability at speed, it's also helping me weight the front tire more effectively. All right, so we've got a steady climb back up to the top of the hill, and we're going to have a pretty fun descent back down. Whew. Now, I have found going up these steadier climbs, I think the combination of that float DPX2 shock out the back and the supple feel that it gives, plus those 2.3 inch Maxxis Minion tires, definitely means the Trance 29 is not the sharpest climber. You have to work a little bit harder. That's where I'll use the compression switch on the rear shock just to firm up the pedaling a little bit, particularly if you've got a long, draggy climb ahead of you. Right, so now we're at the top, and we're going to hit this descent over the other side of the hill. All right, here we go. Now this surface at the moment, very sandy, just because it's been so dry for so long. I'll tell you what, I'm glad to have these Maxxis Minions on here. Got the DHR2 on the front, DHF on the back. The cornering blocks on these things just give such reliable traction through the turns. I think that's bolstered by the 30 millimeter carbon rims on this wheel set. This is Giant's own wheel sets, the TRXI. Carbon fiber rims, straight pull spokes, steel bearing hubs. It's a nice wheel set. All right, coming into a rocky section now. And here, thankfully, because I have that tubeless insert in the back, can really let this bike go and do what it wants to do. Even though we've got a lot of slippery rocks here that do give way, I can feel them giving way underneath the tires, but the bike just stays so composed. Definitely those high traction Minion tires doing a lot there, but also that solid front end on this Trance 29er. It's just unflappable, really. I think this bike performs above its travel numbers. Wow, just so solid through there. The only thing I'm finding lacking on this bike on that sort of stuff are the Guide T brakes from SRAM. They're all right, but they just don't have enough power for the speed this bike can go. It'd be really nice to see a set of SRAM codes, you know, a nice big powerful 4-piston brake. Because the Guide T's just don't quite cut it when you can absolutely fly on this thing. Oh man, that is ace. All right, that was just the last little descent there. That was so much fun. This bike so far is really impressing me. Really capable, really steady on that fast stuff. Just encourages you to push harder, you know, get your weight over the front of it and just let the brakes off and let it fly. And yeah, I'm having a load of fun testing this at the moment. I hope you've enjoyed watching that. If you'd like any more information on this bike, if you've got any questions about it, drop them in the comment section below. I've got a few more weeks of testing with this, got a few more things I want to change to it and try it out. Might even take it to an XC race and see how we go with a few component changes on here. But yeah, so you'll be able to read the full review on singletrackworld.com. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because I have a full video review coming on this bike, along with loads of other videos that we're working on at the moment. So I hope you've enjoyed. Please give us a thumbs up if you did, and we'll see you next time. All right, tooroo.